Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool to find the right size for your digging project. Visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
So in the first segment, we talked about buying in bulk. We're going to talk about freezer meals, freezer prep, how to go about building the inventory in your freezer and doing it the best way possible to get the most space available that's in your freezer, how to get the most in there.
Right. So.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't hear myself.
Oh, I can hear you just
Okay.
fine. Yeah. Real radio.
Real radio.
So let's talk about the freezer meal tips here. Well, first of all, I'll throw this tip out there. This came from YouTube channel. They're over in the UK. They have very small kitchens, very small freezers. So what they do is, if they're not going to can like tomato juice, but they're going to freeze it, you get a orange carton or a milk
Orange juice carton.
Yeah. And then you cut the top off, and then you put your bag in there and you fill it up. You let that, and then you put it in the freezer and you freeze it inside of that carton, and then you seal it back up once it's frozen.
And then you have a cube.
And you have a cube. You pull it out, and then you can stack them like blocks in your freezer instead of, some people will try to lay it flat and then it gets all wonky inside the freezer and things slide off of it. But that's one way to maximize your space by cubing juices in bags. That's one thing. So that kind of helps you out. Family size. It all depends on the size of your family, on, how to go about doing such things.
Right, and that goes back to kind of what we talked about in the first segment, is how big your family is. You might freeze, depending on the size of your family, you might freeze more, you might freeze less, based on how many people are in your household. So that's something to definitely consider. You can also do something, and I do this, where, say I make us a big pot of chili or big crock pot of soup, I will freeze the leftovers a lot of times because, chili leftovers we usually use, but if it's something like soup that we're not going to use, I freeze the leftovers.
Okay.
And so then that way I might have lunch for later or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind too. Or you could double a batch if you're going to cook something and you want to double it, and then you can have something for later.
So, freeze the thing. Freezer space, we talked about, but we'll review it again. It's very important on how and what to put in the freezer.
Right. So you want to think about that, like, do I have room for this?
Do I need this?
Do I need this? Like our freezer space becomes a premium after August, and then as we eat things we frozen, then it becomes less and less. And then we have more space. So we might do some freezer cooking come winter. And it's nice to cook during winter extra because it's colder outside and you don't mind being in the kitchen as much.
And, we freeze our green beans. We don't can them. We don't pressure can them. That's how you're supposed to do such, because it's the safe way to do it. I know some of you still water bath can, but that's, your choice in order what you want to do. We freeze them, so we have to really pay attention to how much space we have, and we've got more beans now than we know what to do with, which is a good problem to have. However, you got to keep that in mind. Right,
for sure. So then another tip is, if you're going to freeze like a pasta dish, you want to and you're just strictly freezing that, you want to undercook it, because you're going to essentially cook it again or warm it up at some point, and that's going to cook the noodles a little bit more.
It'll cause it to overcook if you do that.
Another thing to consider when thinking about freezer meals is, maybe there's a meal that you like, but it's not ideal for freezing. So maybe you do something like, instead of meatloaf, you do like meatloaf cups, and you make the meatloaf and you put it in the muffin tins.
Okay.
And you make these individual little meat lumps.
Right. Personal.
Yeah. Right. And then you can freeze those, and it's delicious. So that's an idea. And then you can do, if you like meatloaf and mashed potatoes, you can certainly freeze mashed potatoes. That's not a problem. But that gives you an alternative to the, and I've seen them where they take the meatloaf and they like kind of put the meatloaf in the tin, and then they put potatoes or cheese or what have you. It's a thing.
Well, that's the other thing. You bring up a point where you need to undercook because you have to cook, and if you cook it all the way and then freeze it and then you warm it up, you've overcooked it and you've turned everything icky.
Right. The only thing I wouldn't recommend doing that with would be chicken.
Okay.
Yeah, chicken you want to cook all the way through before you freeze it.
Well, yeah, for the safety purposes.
Right. So you want to think about what people in the household eat. If you are like, I found this freezer cooking cookbook or whatever, Pinterest, I don't know, whatever. But the people in your household aren't going to eat half the foods, then it's fruitless.
Donate.
Right.
Donate the cookbook.
Donate the cookbook.
Yeah. Well, if nobody's going to utilize the meals that are in it because
But, I mean, people get excited. They see these recipes.
Well,
they get
yeah.
excited. They want to try stuff and yeah. So label stuff.
Yeah.
Because
you play what was this?
Yeah, because it's got some frozen freezer crystals on it, and you're
Right.
like, is this soup or?
And then the fun part is you put it in the sink because you want to guess what it is. Later, you let it thaw out, and it's even worse. It's like, when did we run over a rabbit in the street and then put it in a bag and put it in the freezer? I don't remember doing that, but apparently we must have because that's what it looks like and smells like.
Yeah.
So you want to label, put the date on it, label it, and here's the thing, label it and put it in a bag that's supposed to be for freezer. Don't use the El Cheapo bags you bought on sale that's only for sandwiches.
No, yeah, for sure. You want to use the freezer bags, and not just food storage bags, but freezer.
It says freezer on them.
Yeah, it'll say freezer right in your face. So yeah, that's something that you want to use as the freezer bags. Now, some good dishes are like chicken dishes, as I had mentioned, whether that be like a casserole, some sort of like soup, chicken soup, whatever. All of that freezes really well. And then pasta, Italian dishes, or just like stroganoff, pasta casseroles, those are good too. And soups usually freeze well, and also casseroles. Now you can freeze like, I don't know, maybe you make a chicken pot pie, you have extra, you can freeze that. I don't know how well it thaws out, but you can definitely try.
Right. Well, a couple of years ago, we had excess pears, and we made the pear.
We made a pear pie. Yeah.
And we didn't bake it. We just put all the ingredients together and then slid it in the freezer, in a freezer bag in the freezer. Pulled it out, baked it, and it was fine.
It was a smaller pie.
It was a smaller pie.
But it was good.
Yeah, so that is what can be done there.
Yeah.
So thaw before cooking. This is important because you take frozen, put it in a hot oven. It doesn't equal lovely dinner.
No, because it can get kind of gross. Yeah, so you want to thaw it before cooking, unless you find a recipe that says that you can cook it from frozen.
Like, what you're preparing to put in the freezer is not what you're getting those ready-to-make meals at the grocery store where you take it out of the freezer, pop a couple of holes in the plastic, and slide it right in. We're talking totally different way of going about preparing a meal.
Right. Yes, correct. So you have to think about that as how you're going to heat it up. Now you can portion stuff out. I've done this with anything from lasagna to enchiladas where you portion them into a portion for yourself, and then you have a quick lunch. You would pull it out of the freezer in the morning. By lunchtime, it's going to be ready to be heated up.
Right. So we talked about putting the juice or the liquid in a milk or juice carton. People will also lay them flat. The only problem with doing the laying flat, like I talked about, is you get the irregularities of, like, if your freezer is slightly tilted, that's where it's going to be a big lump on the one end. And also, maybe the freezer bag doesn't seal all the way, or you've overfilled the freezer bag, and as it freezes, it pops open, and then you've got a mess in the freezer that you've got to clean up.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
So it's a difficult mess you got to deal with there when it comes to that. Now, there are devices in which you can, like Tupperware. There's canning manufactured freezing plastic Tupperware, right?
There's freezer lids.
Okay.
For jars, so you can use that.
The glass jars.
Yeah, but there's also these little like plastic jars,
right?
They're made by Ball or whatever, and they are for freezer use, and we've used those.
And there's a line on it where the fill line.
Yeah, there's a fill line
because of expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to. Now, here's the other. Let's talk about. We've got a little time here. Let's talk about you making your own chicken broth and some of the challenges in which, it's a great way to make your own chicken broth or your own vegetable stock. And if you want to talk about how to do that, real briefly, because there's a lot of people out there listening go, oh, I've made it since 46. I've made my own chicken broth. But there's some people in this new age of self-sustainability because of the situation we're in. People are like, you can make your own chicken broth. You can make your own vegetable stock. How do you do that? Well, let's talk about that and then how we can store it in the freezer or other places in that manner. Okay.
So we've done this and we've put it into jars to freeze them. For some reason, even when we leave to the fill line, the jars crack.
Right.
And I don't know why. Do you know why?
No, I have no idea. No, and these are certified canning jars, freezing jars.
These aren't like some pasta
No,
sauce.
El Cheapo mayonnaise glass jars from 87, that type of thing. These are actual things. So anyway, how do we make both of these, the chicken stock and the vegetable stock?
Sure. So, So what do you mean? How do you make it?
Yeah. For somebody who's listening going, you can make your own chicken stock.
Oh.
How does one go about doing such?
So we take chicken bones that we've eaten. I mean, not eaten the bones, but eaten the
rotisserie chicken.
Yeah. Rotisserie chicken or whatever. And we freeze them until we get like a quart size bag full of these chicken bones. You can even go to a gallon size, whatever you got. And then we also take our vegetable scraps, whether that be like carrot ends or
it don't have to be pretty.
It doesn't have to be pretty. Onion peels,
as long as it's not rotten or spongy.
Right.
These are solid pieces of vegetables.
Yeah. So anything that's just like excess, whether like I had mentioned the garlic peels, onion peels, carrot ends, whatever you might put in your compost that is not going to be rotten or spongy, put that in a freezer bag. Kale stems. So you put that in a freezer bag as well. Once that bag gets full, you dump both the chicken, and you can just with just vegetables too. You dump that into a pot, cover it with water, add some salt, add some pepper, maybe more garlic if you want more garlic, whatever you kind of want to flavor it with. And then you let that cook, and I've let it cook for a whole afternoon. And then you strain it out, especially if you are concerned about any little bits of bones. I usually end up straining it twice, and then you freeze it.
And you can do this in a jar, or you can do it in a bag. Now, can you safely can the materials?
You can can chicken broth. Yeah, you have to use a pressure canner, though.
Okay. What about vegetable broth?
You can can that, too, with a pressure
canner. It has to be pressure canned because of the low acidity?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So a couple of things there when it comes to freezer meals and a little lesson on making your own vegetable and chicken stock.
Right. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.